This is about as bad as it gets. You know, there's been a lot of hope that they would sell more BB10 units. Even in recent weeks, a lot of people on the street have raised expectations. They were expecting 5, some 6 million BB10 devices alone, maybe 8 million or so overall BlackBerry units, and this fell way short of everybody's expectations. On top of that, they missed on the bottom line. Their subscribers dropped by 4 million, and their margins fell a bit, and really every metric, Emily, is down across the board.
Now, the CEO, Torsten Heinz, is saying, look, we're still in the early stages of rolling out BlackBerry 10. Be patient. I mean, can anyone really be patient anymore?
You know what, it's hard to be patient because they've been very hopeful for the last 5 months, and some will say, oh, that's not enough to gauge demand. At the end of the day, we've got a really good look at the Z10 demand, and it's a dud by really any metric. There is some variability in the new Q10 and Q5 devices. Those are the BlackBerries with keyboards, and I actually think they're likely to sell a decent amount during this August quarter, and then fade after that. But it's hard to say that investors will care at this point because these first indications of demand are so negative.
Now, they're in a strange spot because they're not really high-end anymore. They're not low-end either. They're in this sort of weird middle ground. What do they do about that? How do they find a market?
I wrote this about a year ago, and I still feel the same way. I think for them to survive, and they will survive, they have $3 billion in cash, they're not going anywhere. But they need to focus on emerging markets, and they need to focus on really cheap keyboard-based products in those emerging markets. You know, Africa is about 43% of their revenues. Latin America is about 15%. There are millions of people who will buy cheap, sub-$200 BlackBerry products, and I think if they can figure out a way to do that profitably, that's where they can survive. Because it's not going to be at the high end. It's not going to be fighting against Apple and Android. But I do think that, you know, smartphones are still about 50% of the global market. There's an opportunity for them to play at the low end, you know, on the cheap side.
You know, Brian, I still have a BlackBerry. You know, I have other phones as well. But, you know, I relied on it for a really long time for email, but I don't really need it for email anymore. It's sort of just like an extra phone line. And the reason I don't use it is the product itself just isn't very good. The touchscreen is horrible. It gets confused with whether I'm touching it, whether I'm trying to make a phone call, what I'm trying to do.
That's a great endorsement for BlackBerry.
Well, why isn't the product better? I mean, it's been years now they've been working on this.
Look, at the end of the day, all they ever really did well that first 10 years of having a product was email. They never really mastered anything else well, but they did email better than anybody else. And I think that it's difficult to create what Android and Apple have done. You know, you have some of the best software engineering minds in the world at those two companies, and then Microsoft I'll throw in there as well, doing great operating systems. BlackBerry just came late to the party and changed their routine a little too late. But you know, the new OS is actually decent, but the problem is that it should have come out 3 years ago. To launch it in 2013 is really just makes it an also-ran, and I think people like you are holding on to their BlackBerries, but most people are letting go of them, and that's best evidenced by their subscriber numbers dropping off.
Right, and I'm increasingly thinking I really don't need it anymore. My last question is about the playbook. It's sort of like an afterthought these days. You once told me the BlackBerry playbook was barely better than a drink coaster. You know, Torsten Heinz said today they're not planning to upgrade it to BlackBerry 10. He had promised that initially. I mean, is the playbook done at this point?
It is done. You know, that's a very nice way of saying that it's over with. They said they're not going to put BB10 on it. BB10 is the future of BlackBerry, and by saying we're not going to put it on there, that's a very gentle way of saying we're killing this product. And you know, as you point out, I thought that was the case from the get-go. I've always regarded the product as dead on arrival. I think the Z10 actually follows that, and I think that, you know, I think it will be dead on arrival a year from now. But I think that they need to focus on the keyboard, the low-end keyboard products in the emerging markets if they want to survive and still sell units.